Welcome to EduCurious. Today we have special guest Danielle Shick, and she is the co-founder and president of Unlocking Education. Welcome, Danielle. So glad to have you.
Thank you. Hey, everybody.
Your company just launched recently, but it is absolutely incredible and it's so far ahead. It's on the cutting edge, but it's really thinking way into the future. So break it down for us. Just tell me a little bit about the company and how you got started.
So I've been in education, public education, for over 23 years, and I really enjoyed it. I mean, it's been a great ride, and I've learned so much and have had a lot of amazing opportunities. And I, as you know, Amber, because we're in the cohort at FSU together, started my doctoral program. And as they do every cohort, they have you choose your topic for your dissertation pretty early. And it was right around the time that, generative AI was the buzz, especially in our virtual environment at Florida Virtual School where I previously worked. And I just wanted to explore it. I thought I'm very curious about this and how it's going to impact education. I really do feel like it could change the way we teach and learn. And so I started diving in. And other than my dissertation, I started reading things on the side, about different tools. And I really feel like it was just timing. I'm a big faith person, and I felt like God kind of opened the door at the right time. And I really paused. I thought I only have 7 years left until I reach my 30 years to retirement with the Florida retirement system. And I don't know, is this the right choice? And I thought, this moment in time, I will never get it back. And AI, even in 7 years, is going to change the landscape of education so much that I feel like right now is just this golden moment where if I step away and develop this company, kind of all of the stars aligned. I had an investor approach me, and it just worked out. I thought, this is perfect. I really enjoyed researching this. And if I get to do it full time and see how I can help other schools and districts kind of navigate this space, it would be this kind of beautiful experience that I'd been kind of itching for already. So all of the pieces fell into place, and I really felt again like it was a moment that I couldn't have imagined myself. But so we developed Unlocking Education, and right now our emphasis is on AI. I'm developing a few products just to guide states, districts, schools through compliance, which I feel like is a big piece. It's more than just using a tool in your classroom. It's really understanding all the risks that come with it and making sure that you use it responsibly and understand that, outputs can have errors, they can have bias. When you choose a tool, what data that the model's trained on? Do you know how the company's going to use the data that your students are providing? So all kinds of just questions that people might not think about at this moment. That part's very, very interesting to me, even though compliance isn't like a very sexy word. The other part of that is just integrating it into our classrooms and preparing our students for the future. More than just the technical nature of the tools and the technology, it's how to use it, how to think critically, and really preparing our students for the place that they're going to work and live. Their future, and ours included, but especially theirs, is going to look a lot different than what we can imagine right now. And so making sure that we prepare students for it. Sadly, the first conversation's been, plagiarism and cheating. There's so much more to it than that.
Tell me how you bridge that gap between an educational institution and the world of AI. What are you providing a school system?
At this point, just consultation, guidance. This course that we're developing will be a 15-hour course, and it'll provide a micro-credential. So, states can use it with their districts and schools to just provide, again, exposure to all of these concepts that educators might not be currently contemplating. And the responsibility piece is huge. If we don't understand what comes along with just, more than how to use a tool, then it's almost dangerous. We have to be responsible. We have to be cautious. We have to make sure we take care to think about all the things that we might not be currently thinking of. Right now, just awareness is a big piece that the support that states and districts and schools might need. But beyond that, everybody's at a different space. That kind of custom consultation is really what will fill the gaps in between the products that we're already developing.
So if I was interested in using AI within my classroom or within my district, I could talk to your company and your company would guide me through the risk assessment, the compliance, the implementation, and what different AI outlets to use. Is that what I'm hearing correctly?
Yeah, so I think it would really, the compliance piece would really be something that a state or a district or even the principal of a school would say, hey, I really want my staff to make sure that we dot all of our I's and cross all of our T's before we just dive into using this. Or it could even be We want these tools. Can you help us navigate the conversations with companies to make sure that we're thinking about the things that we might not be thinking about? It's the course that would really be more on like that state, district, school-wide level. Navigating the compliance piece would be something that's a requirement that a state, a district, or a school might put into place. Where I see the support for educators more outside of that compliance course is, hybrid models where we have cohorts where we invite educators to have a seat in a classroom, virtual classroom, and we have some asynchronous work on the side, some webinars that we have at synchronous times. And then it's that more of a cohort model so we can bridge the gap outside of just your classroom. Like, let's talk to other educators. And so I'm excited to launch. I'd like to see that hybrid course jump live and do our first round. I really do feel like connecting educators beyond just their classroom or even their school will help facilitate good conversation and really just breed creativity. A lot of us, when we're in our classrooms, we don't see what other people are doing. Connecting educators will really inspire a lot of people.
Are you going to be custom designing depending on your location, state, district, so it follows with all those guidelines?
Yeah, so the compliance course I've been developing on a national scale, so it's really aligned with our governmental guidance. I know that that's looking a little bit different as potentially the government is dismantling national support. Even if it goes to the statewide level, the concepts are very general in the sense that it's not specific to exact tools. It doesn't name specific tools like ChatGPT or Copilot or any of those pieces. And it also doesn't really get too specific to a state or even a district. It's really more on a national level. The concepts are broad and general enough that no matter where you are across the country, I mean, technically the globe, this course would apply.
Can you give us some examples of how, like, all the good things that you're seeing AI help within education?
One of the biggest pieces that is so needed is just removing that administrative burden from teachers, even outside of the classroom. Any position in education, there's so much time and energy spent on unplanned things that pop up each day. So I remember working in not too long ago, you would have all of that people time, anything that pops up that's unplanned during the day. And then you're bringing home at night or on the weekends, the work that is that more administrative type that you need that quiet time that's uninterrupted and you can sit down at your computer. Just seeing that administrative burden be relieved is one great way that I'm seeing it be used. Everybody would love to give teachers time back. The fact that AI can support us in that is a great way to use it. I also think that just giving teachers ideas, it's almost kind of correlates with that time piece. But if I want 5 different ways to teach the same lesson, I can get inspiration from one of, the AI tools that I might be using within my school, navigating the sides of the piece of the puzzle that we might not think about. We also have to be sure that it's not diminishing our creativity. So it can give us inspiration, but I do think it, outside of giving us some brainstorms, it's really limited. Making sure we use it as a tool, not as a crutch, is important. I've seen teachers use it for writing IEP goals. I've seen differentiating lessons. I have this student with this disability. I want to teach this concept. What ideas can you give me? Protecting all of that PII is important, making sure you're not putting the student's name in there and what school you're at, or, keeping it all very broad and vague. It's almost like having like a friend in your pocket, like, hey, what do you got? And it really just, even if it's not the idea that you take and run with, it can potentially inspire you to have a new idea.
And once you connect with a district, you get a contract and you're working with them. Are you educating the teachers and administrators on how to teach the students how to properly use AI?
We do have a student course in development that's very, introductory. And I know every school, every district, there are some out there that are like pioneers. So they've got a lot of things organized and a lot of structure, but there are some who don't. So we're trying to herd the cats, like the cat's out of the bag. Everybody's starting to use it. And so the student course, if you're a school or a district that has not really been proactive and you feel like you're ahead of the game, ahead of the conversation, this student course will really lay the groundwork for helping students understand, okay, what is this? How can I use it with school responsibly? How can I prompt it? How do I make sure I'm not plagiarizing? What's an assignment that's appropriate to use this for? It will kind of, again, just have a very general kind of broaching of the subject so that, again, it's not specific to a unique state or school district or school, but it will at least kind of say, okay, we know you're using this. Let's at least touch base and make sure that you've got these pieces, these foundational concepts down. What I'm more inspired by is helping teachers prepare students for the skills they'll need in partnership with AI. So it's not the technical piece, it's not the how to use the tool, because I feel like it's somewhat intuitive. And not to say that we're anti-training on that, but there's enough training out there that I feel like even the companies of the tools that you're using provide that very basic training. But it's okay, now that you are using it, let's talk about how you can ensure that your students aren't relying on this tool too much. Are they being critical thinkers when, they have an output? How are they checking to see, okay, is this accurate? Is there any error? Is there any bias? When I look at like the World Economic Forum and things like that, if you look at the year 2030, even, the skills that they're going to need in the workforce are very different than what we've been used to. Being analytical, being a critical thinker, having strong emotional intelligence, knowing how to partner with AI so that there's always a human in the loop. It's a tool, it's a piece of the puzzle. It's not the only thing we can rely on. Making sure students are comfortable with it, helping educators know that not using it is almost just as damaging as using it. If you take two students who are going to college and one has had the exposure to AI and has been taught how to be a good digital citizen compared to a student who hasn't, that student is going to, really flourish, and they're going to be so much more prepared. Even if it's just awareness and exposure, they have that advantage over a student who doesn't.
What are some of the trends that you're kind of forecasting, some of these life skills that you want these students to be prepared for with AI?
Being flexible and open-minded. Also, being comfortable with the fact that there's many versions of the truth. And so that's where not relying on an output from an AI tool is so critical, because you can use that and sometimes it's factually correct. But has it limited your perspective? Has it, stopped you from thinking about things through different angles? Now, I remember reading an article about a Harvard professor who did a study, and he gave his class a scenario, and they had to, they were law students. They had to provide solutions to this legal scenario. But he then came to them and said, okay, if you did use an AI output, talk to me about what that provided you. And long story short, the students came to realize that it had really stunted their creativity. Like, they were not coming to the table with as creative, out of the box solutions to the scenario that they maybe would have without ChatGPT or whatever tool, Copilot, Gemini, whatever tool they were using. What it really shows me is that students could very easily rely on these tools just out of laziness. If it's very easy to say, write me an essay on this. What can be stunting is that their creativity, they're not going to get the chance to exercise that as much. In the workplace, do you want someone who knows how to use AI and be a critical thinker and can be analytical with the outputs that it provides? Or do you want someone who all they know how to do is to prompt and take that information and bring it to the table? Probably both of those scenarios are better than a student who doesn't do either of those things. If they aren't even familiar with AI, obviously that's probably more of a disadvantage. But I just think I want our students to live in a world where they are independent thinkers, almost being an extension of a robot. Like, I can prompt this tool and take this answer, and that's all I know how to do with it. So I don't know. I think the world's going to look very, very different. And I say our students today, I have two still in high school, so I know the future they're going to live in is probably very different than what I had previously imagined for them. So I just want them to be smart and savvy and an independent, unique thinker. If they're relying on AI too much, there's that concept of over reliance. I think that can be dangerous too.
Yeah, I've had some conversations with a couple of educators, and the ones that are really embracing it say, oh my gosh, it's making me more creative, or it's giving me more tools in my toolkit, or it's giving me more time. And that part excites me. What do you think of like the jobs in the next couple of years are going to look like? I don't know. People used to want to be like firefighters and police officers, and now there's like so many more different jobs I might not have even thought of, but you might. Tell us.
I know. I am very curious myself. I think honestly, in the exposure to the literature and the news articles and all of that I've been seeing, what I have found is just the predictions that we're going to be using machines for more of those automated tasks than we ever have been. The workplace is already preparing for that. Looking again, World Economic Forum is a great resource. If you haven't ever checked it out, there's a lot of great infographics, a lot of great, statistics that they share. Some of the things they're forecasting, and again, the 2030, it's the 2025 job report, but they're forecasting out to 2030. There's this one graphic that I really appreciate because it shows, versus 2030 and how, the percentages of human tasks, human and machine tasks jointly, and just machine tasks are going to change, like the percentage. There's definitely a shift in the amount of tasks that are performed by humans versus the amount that are going to be performed by humans jointly with machines or machines separately. And so I don't know. I'll be very, very curious, like you, like what jobs have I not even thought of that are going to pop up that are exciting, but also a little nerve-wracking. I think there are all kinds of concepts and extensions of AI. Like I was in a webinar where they were talking about the sustainability issue and how to cool these data centers, there's an increase of water that has to be used to cool these data centers because of all of the machines working so hard and producing, electricity. And so it was talking about in Ireland, they're now using, I guess they have one of the world's largest data centers. 21% of the global water usage is dedicated to Ireland for this data center. And not the data center alone, but just that's a concept that I hadn't really thought much about. And so I thought there could even be jobs that pop up related to sustainability because of AI that we haven't thought of before as well. So there's this environmental concern that we're going to have to start entertaining as well if we haven't already, just because of the electricity and water usage alone.
What I was thinking the other day about AI is right now we have all these resources and we're getting to pull the data from what's out there already. But our output eventually is going to technically get a little bit watered down. And so what are we going to be pulling from as authentic resources?
Right.
So even considering that whole cycle.
I know.
Mention some more about resources that keep you up to speed on all the advancements.
So, honestly, you can become just overwhelmed by all of the things. I would caution you to maybe not subscribe to every newsletter and email that an organization is willing to send your way. I've been in the pattern lately of going to a resource more than having it sent my way just because my email inbox is just oversaturated. I keep mentioning World Economic Forum just because it's super cool to see what they're projecting related to our economy and the workforce. Teach AI is a great tool. Their website is amazing. But I feel like I've gotten so much ISTE. I love ISTE, which is, if you've not ever been to that site or their conference, it's really great. I've been more in the mode of going to find what I want versus having it sent my way. Especially like news articles and stuff. Sometimes I like to sift through what just looks like fluff versus quality.
So I want to go back and hear a little bit about your educational journey, your teaching philosophy, now leadership philosophy, now business owner philosophy, but how each of these roles have prepared you to take on this big endeavor.
My educational journey took this very like grassroots, like evolution. I Lake Wales girl, so I went, through Warner, graduated, ended up teaching at Lake Wales High School, actually after making a pit stop at Haines City High School. That was my very first. And then I had only taught for a couple of years, and I thought, I like teaching, but when I see myself at that 30-year mark, do I still see myself teaching? And I thought, I don't. So at the time, I thought about like going back to school, and I was like, psychology was super interesting, but I decided to go back for a master's in ed leadership and did that. So again, I started the program at USF 2 years into teaching. I finished. I'd been a teacher for 4 years. And then at Lake Wales High School, a dean position opened up. And so I moved into an academic dean dean of activities first. Saying academic, I went more, even though my title was activities, I kind of lived in both worlds a little bit. And then I did that for 2 years. And then at Lake Wales High School, the assistant principal curriculum job opened up. And so I moved into that role. So, I mean, when I look back at just moving from teacher to dean to assistant principal in a short time frame, I definitely would not have predicted that. But it was a great experience. I think one of the things I always would tell teachers as a school leader is when I started teaching, I really thought I was doing this amazing job. And I'm sure I didn't harm all of my students. But you know how that feels when you're in the classroom and you're starting out and you're green and you're making mistakes, but you don't even realize all the mistakes you're making. And as soon as I became a dean and got to walk in and out of other people's classrooms, I thought, man, I really missed out. Like there's so many great things happening and I never even saw it. So I'm a big proponent of instructional rounds. I think if a school is not doing that, they're missing out because again, when you're in your classroom, you think how you teach is how most people are teaching. And then as dean and then assistant principal of curriculum, if I had to pick my favorite job of all time, it would be that assistant principal of curriculum job. I absolutely loved it. I was able to build the master schedule, interact with students on the academic side of things, and I just really treasured those years. So I did that for 8 years at Lake Wells High School. And then I had these amazing children, 2 were older, 2 were younger, and I started to feel very pulled in so many different directions. And so again, an opportunity opened up at Florida Virtual School where I was an instructional leader for a year, which is on their flex side. I stepped into Florida Virtual School supervising 56 Spanish 1 teachers. So that was an incredible experience. And I got to learn what education looks like in a virtual world, which I would never have guessed some of the incredible ways they educate kids. It is such quality education. You just don't even know until you've seen it firsthand. And so I did that for a year and then moved to an assistant principal job on the virtual side of Florida Virtual and their full-time program. That's where I came back to my first love of building a master schedule, helping students academically. The high school online at the time was right around maybe 2,500 kids, and we helped them get their diploma through the state of Florida. They did state testing. We had dual enrollment. We had AP classes. It's really everything a traditional high school would have. It's just online. And so I did that for 4 years, and then the principal job at that high school opened, and so I moved into that role, and I did that for 4 years. Ironically, my first year as principal was the same year that COVID happened. And so if you were in brick and mortar, you were dealing with navigating virtual education for the first time. But in our space, we just exploded. So I became the principal in May of 2020, I believe. And so, here we are at like 2,800 students at the time. August rolls around. We're now at like 5,300. So we exploded. And, it's my first year as principal at the school. Fortunately, I had been at the school for a while. And we were very exhausted. I will say, you think you're sitting at home and, you're just so relaxed, but it is a busy job when you're educating kids, especially that many. We hired something like 75 new teachers and educators that year. It's wild. I went from having this list of things that I wanted to accomplish and then exploding to double the size and hiring all these new people. It felt good at the end of the year. We still accomplished all of the things that I really wanted to. So it's that I will treasure those 4 years as principal for sure, and still miss a lot of those people. And so after that, moved into the director role at Florida Virtual School, and I was able to supervise the elementary, the middle, and the high school in our full-time program. And again, it's a full K-12 system, about 600 staff members, have about, I say we have because I'm so used to still being there. But yeah, right around 10,000 students. But if your only exposure to virtual education is what happened during COVID in a brick and mortar setting, it's definitely a very different experience if you've not seen what Florida Virtual can do. So all of these different positions I had exposed me to so many different things. I think I've worked for Polk County, I've worked for Lake Wells Charter, I've worked for a virtual environment. The really neat thing that I don't think I would have ever predicted is I got exposed to so many different ways of doing things, even at that district level. And so what's cool is Florida Virtual also is a business. They're a school district, but they're a business. And so I was exposed to a lot of different ways of thinking outside of just being an educator. Marketing to our students at Florida Virtual High School when I was the principal there, or the director of all 3 full-time schools, we had to think about marketing and we had to think about retention for students and we had to think about customer service. One of my favorite books we did as a staff was called Be Our Guest, the Disney book. And so we talked about, we want to give our students a Disney experience. We want them to want to come back. That's sometimes a lost art that if you're in a district where you have roll-ups and you just have students that are guaranteed to come to you because of enrollment, school zones, sometimes you can get into that mode of oh, well, we don't have to make our customer experience the best that it possibly can be because they're coming to us either way. But I do think that's part of my educational philosophy is students should be excited to wake up and come to school every day. And as educators, we should treat them like customers. And it doesn't mean that it's Burger King and everybody gets everything they want, but it does mean that we should be treating them like a customer. And if we can make something work for them, why wouldn't we try? All of that, if I sum up just who I am as a leader and an educator, I am very pro student, and I will be super creative if I can. A lot of times in talking with educators, they're very, very focused on the rules and the policies. And I'm one of those people that, like, there's not a one size fits all. And I do believe that we have to obviously abide by state law and district policy, but we're critical thinkers, and we can think beyond policy sometimes to see, like, okay, we're not violating any policies, but this is a different situation and a different student. How can we help this student reach their goals? I definitely am very pro student, and I'm super like roll up my sleeves, jump in with the team kind of approach. The teachers that I've worked with, the educators that I've led would tell you the same thing, that I'm approachable, that I will definitely be willing to try whatever they're excited to try. That was one of my favorite things as a leader, is just having people come to me and say, hey, I have this great idea. I want to do this. And as long as it didn't contradict the vision that I had for the school, or it wasn't illegal, I was like, that's awesome. Let's try it. Let's do it. And then too, just I love, love, love new ideas and being creative. And so one of the favorite things I got to do when I was at Lake Wales was go visit schools. It was under Donna Dunson's leadership, but we would go visit schools. We would see how people were doing things. We'd try new things. And I carried a lot of just that excitement and experience of being able to go out, seek new ideas, and put them into practice with me when I went to Florida Virtual School too. I've never ever thought about the business side of things through creating something for yourself. I can tell you all kinds of stuff I've learned about copyright and like protecting licenses and all the things that I never really thought I'd be diving into before. I've learned new tools to create this course that I'm building. I'm excited to just take my experiences and take what I'm excited about, my passions, and really just help educators do that very thing. Like, hey, what is it you're trying to do? Let's put our heads together. How can I support that? I've been using the 3-year timeline. There's a product that I want to sell that would be a consulting package. One of my other favorite things as a leader is taking an idea and matching that with your goals, and then building a vision around it and communicating that vision to your staff. Sometimes that's an art that a lot of people haven't either practiced, or it's hard for them to articulate. Other school leaders really understand and conceptualize their vision and know how to communicate that to their staff is a passion of mine. It's just almost like a comprehensive approach, but using AI to leverage that.
That is really interesting because I've been in a lot of those leadership summer breakout sessions where we're like, okay, well, what is our goal and how are we meeting our student needs through that goal? And I'm envisioning having the know-how with AI and getting all of the information that makes our system what it is, and being able to understand and be educated on what kind of prompts to pull all that out and give you that fine-tuned, beautiful piece of focus, direction. That is an amazing package that I'm excited to see you develop, because it is hard when you're balancing leading a school to then think about, well, how do I even explain what I'm doing? I've heard other input on AI and curriculum and how it's both sides. AI can help you extract core content from curriculum and then do tiered instruction and then do great output and help the teacher be more creative. Where are you seeing curriculum and AI go in the near future? And is that something that you're a part of right now with your company?
Being so new, I do see a feature in that, but we're not really spending a lot of our time in that space at the moment. Where I see the direction of our company going is more support and consulting around the tools. I don't see us ever getting into the space of tool development, things like that. But I do think, and again, I'm thinking through that compliance lens because that's where I've been living these last several months, is it can do amazing things. And it will continue to evolve and get better and better. We kind of take this snapshot of our conversation at this moment in time. In a year, it might be crazy reliable and we're not having the concerns that we're having now. But I do think that it has a lot of potential to, especially with differentiating and reaching kids where they are to scaffold them up to where you want them to be. So I do think in the way of individualized education and tutoring and things like that, I really feel like once we get over the hurdle of the concern and the hesitation. And I don't think, as I'm doing research across the country, not every state, school district, school is hesitant. Some people are doing some of these things, but I would love to see schools and districts leverage AI more to reach a kid where they are. That's one of the things, if I go back to my own experiences at Florida Virtual School, students loved the fact that they could work through the course at their own pace. And we did have traditional school schedules and calendars. So there was some pace, but, I would hear from some students, I'm in the classroom and I could do, honestly, I hear this from my daughter sometimes, like I could do the work in an entire school day in a couple of hours, but there's all the other things that take up our time. And it's not even, sometimes it's in the classroom that's taking up the time because as the student, you're ready to keep going on, but someone else isn't. So then you're forced to go at that same pace of everyone else. So I could see some really cool things happening with AI that really helps enrich for students who really are ready to go on, but then remediate for the kids who aren't quite there yet. There's a lot of possibility, but I'm not seeing a lot of like trust in the tools yet, at least in my experiences. They're happening out there. And I have thought like maybe I need to start traveling around to these schools and seeing it with my own eyes, people that are using these tools deeply. Because I just, right now in my circles, I'm not seeing it happen quite yet.
Do you think AI works best in the virtual world, Florida Virtual School implementing AI features, or works in tandem with a classroom setting and the differentiated instruction? Or does it just kind of blow everything out of the water and you can use it wherever, however you need to?
Option C. I think honestly, I do. I mean, I can really use it wherever. It has to look different than just like plopping kids on a computer if you're in brick and mortar. Because, again, even at Florida Virtual School, kids just aren't sitting at their computers for 8 hours every day. I mean, they're doing other things at home in between. There is live synchronous instruction. Even if they're at a computer, they're interacting with teachers and students. You have to be intentional so that it's not just I'm going to put this kid on this program and do this thing. If I used a brick and mortar example of something that's not related to AI, it would be like the equivalent of worksheets. Like I'm going to make this worksheet and copy off a whole bunch and give this to my students. So I guess if I umbrella all of that busy work, there really needs to be some intentionality. Again, I don't think AI is the subject. I think AI is the tool. We really, really have to be intentional so that it doesn't become easy as an educator to just put kids on a tool. But I do think, again, going back to the digital citizenship piece, the more exposure we can give students, the better. If we can use it to enhance the way they think, even better. The big kind of shakeup in education, I feel like, is teachers who want to cling to the way they've always done things. And so instead of saying, oh, I always assess my students by having them write an essay, now I'm going to just go back to paper and pencil because they can, use a generative AI tool to write their essay for them. Okay, well, that's really not helping in the big picture of it all. Like maybe you need to think about a different way to assess. So I know, I've seen examples of students. I want you to write an essay. And maybe as a teacher, I'm monitoring, you're not on computer or whatever that looks like. Or maybe you have a tool that allows them to open one application at a time so that they're writing the essay. But then the other side of that is, okay, now have generative AI write an essay and let's compare and contrast. What are the benefits of having AI write this? What about without the prompting? What, benefits did you see as a human writing it? And that's just one example of a whole laundry list of things you could do. If we just put our head in the sand and say, we're just going to not use this, I think that's, it'll blow over, it'll go away. Those educators they're going to be left behind.
And you mentioned like with your career progressions, timing with COVID shutting everything down and giving options for new ways of teaching and learning really just cracked open that door, just shoved it way open for all of this AI development. How did you first get interested in this subject? You're in charge of a big component of Florida Virtual, but then like what made you want to jump into like that whole AI dynamic?
Honestly, I think the conversation at the teachers, that's what they started worrying about. I remember November 2023, like logging on to ChatGPT for the first time. Like I was super intrigued. I thought, what is this? And, I remember one of the very first things that I did my mind was blown was I had this huge book on my bookshelf that I did not have the time to read at the moment. Still have not read it actually, but it was called How Not to Die. And I know, it's actually a self-help book, but it's teaching you how to eat healthy, and just increase your longevity. And it is like a fat book. So I'm like, okay, I would love to read this. I told ChatGPT to develop a meal plan using the principles of how not to die. And I remember it just spit it out like, this is your meal plan. And it told me why it was choosing the things that it was choosing. And then I said, now I want you to make a grocery list. And it spit it out. And all of this happened in a matter of 5 minutes or less. And so I just remember like my mind was blown and I thought, wow, like this is so amazing. Like what is possible with this thing? And then as we've all followed the technological evolution, cooler and cooler things have happened. It was just all of that right at that time. It was just very, very exciting. The buzz was, oh no, cheating, being that very open-minded, loving new idea type of person that I am. I was like, wait a minute, like this is cool. Like I want to see where this takes us. And there's got to be more to it than just going back to paper pencil. That's kind of really what opened my mind to it at the time.
And then it's evolved from there to where now you have quite a wealth of knowledge on AI and its functionality within education that you're able to now help others and teach the teachers and teach the administrators.
I feel like I've scratched the surface too. Like there's so much to know.
Give us your vision of your company, that Unlocking Education brand, and short-term vision.
I feel like there's really solid principles to education and to succeeding within that sector. Right now, AI is a big part of that. 10 years, 20, 30 years down the road, it will still be there, but it might not be the buzz. So I don't want to pin an entire company on one concept. Unlocking education is truly just what is the potential. I think I always, and I put it in our Facebook group just a couple weeks ago, that picture of education 100 years ago and then today, where everybody's in rows sitting in desks looking at the teacher at the front of the room. I feel like there's so much more potential that we can unlock. And it's really just making sure that we're empowering our teachers to think beyond that. I sum up all of the experiences I've had that have led me to that is going and seeing things really have opened my mind, whether it was leaving the classroom as a dean and seeing other teachers' classrooms or leaving the state and going and seeing how people do things outside, even outside of the public sector. If I think about the short-term vision of our company, it's really flexible and we can pivot to really help a school, a district, a state with whatever they need. Right now, our emphasis is AI. Beyond that, it's helping a school, a state, a district set goals, set a vision, experience, or prepare them to be able to share that vision with their staff that they're leading. And then everybody's rowing in the same direction to reach that goal. I will just be excited to be able to be a solutions partner with whoever needs it in the space. Right now, that's AI, but in 10, 20 years, who knows what that'll look like.
And one day, AI might just be so commonplace, sort of like a word processor. It's just integrated within our lives.
Yes.
AI will just be like, that's part of it. Okay.
Yeah.
But so
I mean, it makes
fascinating.
me think of the internet. Like, I always watch this like Katie Couric video where she's like, "What is this internet thing?" And I just think it's gonna go away. I don't think it's gonna. And so it's just funny because it's like I go back and I watch that sometimes just to remind myself, like the people who are like, "What is this AI thing?" I think it's gonna go away. It's here to stay, kind of like the internet was. So we got to figure out how to live life with it. But I agree. Katie Couric now is like probably laughing at herself, like internet, like it's a part of everything we do, and we don't think twice about it. So if I had to predict, I would think AI will be the same way.
Did you have any other things that you wanted to make sure to include in this?
Two thoughts popped into my head when you just asked that question. I did a session at our Florida Virtual Annual Conference on women in leadership, just because we're both women here and we're both educators, that I want to just say if you've not done a lot of research about that, I would definitely say go out there and take a peek. the percentage of educators who are teachers is very high when it comes to women versus men. But then as leaders, as we climb the ladder and people go into leadership, it starts to become very heavily dominated by men. And so what I would say to that is don't wait to make the leap. If you're a mom, if you're Amber and I are both students right now, like there's going to always be something that's taking your time. But I would definitely encourage you, do whatever you can to get out into that leadership space, get those experiences, put your names out there, talk to the people in your space and say, hey, I'd really love to grow. And what can I do to like gain some leadership experiences? So as women, we hold ourselves back because we're moms or whatever. And so while we have to balance, I would definitely encourage all the ladies out there who are looking to grow as leaders to don't hesitate to jump in with both feet. And then just also the balance piece. As educators, we're all very tired and exhausted, and you can pour your energy and blood, sweat, and tears into something. And at the end of the day, just make sure that, you don't have any regrets. So I know both of those kind of contradict each other, but I feel like those are the two things that I've talked to educators a lot about that they're often quietly struggling with.
Thanks for being on the show. Whether you're a teacher, a parent, or just EduCurious, join the community as we explore various educational topics and learn from each other. We'll see you for our next episode.